So you have different types of classes. Think about it. All the classes that you create, you can divide them into two categories. One is classes that contain state, and they are pretty much a data structure. They hold information. And these classes can be mutable, can be immutable. Most of the time they are immutable, but these are all your models, these are all your DTOs, these are all your entities, value objects, aggregates, and so on. And then you also would have a classes that do something. They would be managing something like the data structures. So this is where you have all your controllers, managers, services, repositories, and a bunch of others. So you want to separate your concerns. So you want to separate your classes that do something and the classes that contain the state. So an example of this would be this one here. So when you interface this one like this, it clearly communicates that this is a doer class. It's not a state, so it should be stateless. The same is with the services, whether you call outside world or whether it's an application service or domain service. These services should not contain a state. How do you know it contains a state? For example, whenever I put something like this, I don't know, maybe an ID, like a private ID, this already having those properties tell me that there might be a code smell. So be careful about it, like don't mix the state with the stateless approaches. Why do I tell you this? Well, I tell you this because it makes a lot of sense when you interface stuff. So doer class are very perfect example of where you would use interfaces. So it helps you create a composition in your code where models, not always it makes sense to make interfaces. Like what kind of interface would that have anyway? Like that it gets an ID, that it has a getter for ID. I mean, that's not good enough. What you could be doing is extension. So in the models, it's pretty common that you actually extend from another model. You have to be careful about it though, like you always should use composition. It's much more powerful concept than the inheritance. But in general, think about it like generally models could extend, and then you have the list of principle. But this is not the scope of this video. I'm gonna talk about it in the future videos. The whole point is when you interface and you use interface segregation principle, you want to make sure you do it on the doer class. And then also when you actually want to follow the single responsibility, you also would probably want to have like a single interface, a single method that it implements. Like a resolver would have one method called resolve. Manager could have one method called manage. But of course, then you have also those public APIs, things like have a facade pattern or service could contain multiple methods, and the same like those finds users could contain multiple ones. Some of it is an exception to the rule, but generally try to stick to single method and have it composed over inherited and stuff like this. So I hope it helps. If you have any questions or comments, please leave it in the bottom of this video, and then I'll be more than happy to help out.